You ever lived in a place that's got more character than a sitcom cast? That was my NYC basement apartment. The kind of spot where every creak and groan tells a story, and the biggest storyteller was this massive crack in the floor. Ran through my place like it had a mind of its own, sprawling out like a road map of all the places I'd never been. I dubbed it the Grand Canyon. Had to make light of it somehow, right? 'Cause in New York, you learn to laugh or you start packing, and I wasn't about to give up my slice of the city. For 2 whole years, that crack and I cohabited like old roommates. I'd step over it every morning on my way to the kitchen, brew my coffee, and muse about filling it with something ridiculous, like gold paint just to make it a feature. Check out my gold-veined floors, I'd tell guests, watching their eyes pop. But guests were as rare as silence in the city, and that crack, it became just another part of my day-to-day. This apartment, man, it was my castle. Sure, it was a basement unit with a view of exactly 0, and yeah, the only natural light I got was when the upstairs neighbors remembered to move their laundry basket off the grate. But it was mine. Affordability and proximity to the subway made it a gem in the rough being the cutthroat real estate market of NYC. You find a place that doesn't eat your wallet for breakfast, you hold onto it like it's the last lifeboat on the Titanic. Decorating around the Grand Canyon became an art. Furniture placement was strategic, ensuring no one would accidentally take a dive. I joked about giving tours, charging folks to see the 8th wonder of the basement world. Had to keep the humor alive, because when you're living paycheck to paycheck in the city that never sleeps, sometimes laughter's all you've got to insulate against the noise, both outside and in. The imperfections of the apartment, from the peeling paint like aged skin to the symphony of pipes that sang the blues at 3 a.m., they all added to its charm. Or so I convinced myself. You see, in NYC, your apartment isn't just where you live. It's a testament to your survival skills, a badge of honor. I've made it here, cracks and all, I'd boast, half in jest, half in pride. And honestly, aside from the occasional raised eyebrow or concerned glance from the few friends who braved the subway ride to my subterranean sanctum, I'd nearly forgotten about the crack. It was just another quirk of my quirky life. Until, that is, the earth decided to remind me who was really in charge. One normal coffee-filled morning turned extraordinary when a 4.8 magnitude quake decided to rattle my bones and, more importantly, my apartment. The jolt was like the city itself had decided to shake off its complacency, stirring something deep and forgotten. As the ground danced beneath me, that crack, my crack, yawned wide, a gaping maw suddenly revealing itself as more than a mere floor feature. It became a chasm, a crevasse, a cry from the depths that I could no longer ignore. I stared into the abyss, coffee in hand, as dust motes danced in the sliver of light invading my usually dim abode. The quake had turned my Grand Canyon into something alive, something hungry. It was a wake-up call, a realization that sometimes you can live with something so long you forget it can wake up. And now it was wide awake. So there I was, standing on the edge of an unknown in the heart of NYC, with the earth's voice whispering up at me. A call to adventure? A warning? Either way, life in my basement apartment was about to get a lot more interesting. The morning of the quake felt like any other. Sunlight was a rumor in the basement, and my alarm clock was the city's heartbeat. Relentless, unforgiving. I shuffled out of bed, half awake, my routine a well-rehearsed dance. Except today, the earth decided to cut in, uninvited. I was mid-shuffle, my brain still foggy with sleep, when the ground beneath me started to jitterbug. It wasn't gentle, like the rumbling of a passing subway train I'd grown accustomed to. No, this was an all-out roar, a beast waking from its slumber directly beneath my feet. The walls shimmied, cans in the cupboard rattled a nervous beat, and my heart? It went from 0 to 100, racing with the sudden fear of a New Yorker facing an unfamiliar beast. An earthquake. The quake hit like a heavyweight punch, a 4.8 on the Richter scale, they said later. To me, it felt like the world was ending. Cups crashed from shelves, pictures slapped the floor face down, and that crack, the Grand Canyon, my apartment's quirky feature, it just gave way. It transformed before my eyes, a crack becoming a chasm, a joke turning into a jaw-dropping reality. The floor beneath me wasn't a floor anymore. It was a gaping void, threatening to swallow anything too close, myself included. Now you gotta understand, panic isn't my style. I'm a New Yorker. We pride ourselves on keeping cool when the going gets tough. But standing there, staring into what seemed like the abyss, cool was the last thing I felt. My first thought? Damn, my security deposit is definitely gone now. Followed quickly by, is this how I go out? Swallowed by my own apartment? But as the shaking subsided and the dust began to settle, curiosity edged out fear. The quake had stopped, leaving behind a silence that was almost eerie. My apartment, once familiar and cramped, now felt alien, with this new uninvited addition. And me? I was left standing on the edge, quite literally, of a new unknown. I called out, half expecting an echo or worse, a response. But the crevasse remained silent, a dark secret yawning wide in the heart of my home. It's funny how quickly the human mind adapts to the surreal. 1 minute you're making coffee, the next you're contemplating the void in your living room. I did what any sensible person would do in the aftermath of an earthquake that just remodeled their apartment for free. I made coffee. The act was mundane, almost comforting in its normality. As the coffee brewed, I paced the edge of the crevasse, peering into its depths, half expecting something to peer back. But there was only darkness, a silence that seemed to suck in sound. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Work calls, emails, the usual grind. Except, every so often, my gaze would drift to the crevasse, and I'd wonder, what lay beneath? Was my apartment now a gateway to hidden worlds, or just structurally unsound in a more dramatic way? Ignoring it became a skill I mastered as the hours ticked by. I even took a nap, a defiant act of normalcy, in the face of my apartment's newfound appetite for destruction. The crevasse was a problem for future me. Present me had more immediate concerns, like deadlines and not getting fired. Yet, as the day waned and my apartment grew quiet, the reality of my situation settled in like an unwelcome guest. There was a chasm in my living room. My apartment, my sanctuary in the concrete jungle, had turned on me, opening up to reveal a piece of the earth's hidden layers. And with that realization came a whisper, a voice from the deep, calling me to explore, to discover. I should have been afraid. I should have called someone, anyone. But instead, I felt a pull, a curiosity that tugged at my very soul. What was down there? What secrets did the earth hold beneath the cracked facade of my NYC basement apartment? As night fell and shadows danced along the edges of the crevasse, I knew one thing for sure. My life, my reality, had shifted, and there was no going back. So there I was, post-quake, living with a gaping hole in my apartment floor. Sounds like the setup to a bad joke, right? But trust me, the reality was far from funny. The crevasse sat there, silent and dark, a constant reminder that my quaint basement dwelling had turned into the setting of a horror movie, one where the floor could literally swallow you whole. Ignoring it became my new hobby. Work, eat, sleep, repeat, all while pretending there wasn't a chasm in the living room that looked like it led straight to the center of the earth. But denial, as it turns out, only gets you so far when your apartment's trying to whisper sweet nothings. It started subtle, like the faintest breeze carrying a secret message just for me. "Climb down," it said. The first time I heard it, I laughed it off. Great, I thought. Now I'm hearing things. That's all I need. But the whispers didn't stop. They grew bolder, clearer, as if gaining strength from my attempts to ignore them. You ever have one of those moments where you question everything? Like, why you decided to live in a basement apartment in NYC of all places? Or why you thought it was a good idea to major in philosophy? Hearing whispers from a hole in your floor tends to bring on one of those moments. Big time. I tried everything to drown them out. Music, TV, even took up meditation for a hot second. But it was like those whispers had a direct line to my brain, bypassing my ears entirely. "Climb down," they insisted, a mantra that became the soundtrack to my life. The rational part of me knew I should be freaking out, maybe even checking myself into the nearest clinic. But there was another part, a part I didn't know existed, that was intrigued. What did it mean to climb down? Down to where? Was it a metaphor? An invitation? A threat? The mystery of it consumed my thoughts, an obsession that I couldn't shake. One night, driven by a mix of desperation and sheer curiosity, I found myself standing at the edge, peering into the abyss. The whispers felt louder here, more insistent. "Climb down," they beckoned, and for a moment, I almost did. The thought of what lay below, the secrets it promised to reveal, was intoxicating. But fear, that ancient primal instinct, held me back. Fear of the unknown, fear of what I might find, fear of stepping into a darkness from which there might be no return. So I backed away, retreating to the false safety of my bed. But the whispers followed, a constant echo in my mind. Days turned into weeks and the whispers became my constant companions. They were there when I woke up, a ghostly chorus over my morning coffee. They filled the silence of my apartment, whispering their seductive plea with every shadow that danced across the walls. I told myself I was managing, that I could live with this new, bizarre reality. But the truth? The truth was that I was hanging by a thread. My grip on what I considered normalcy was slipping, eroded by the relentless call from the crevasse. Then Jenny came into the picture, a breath of fresh air in the stale, whisper-filled atmosphere of my life. Her laughter, her light, it made me believe, if only for a moment, that I could be free of the whispers, that I could share my space, my life without fear of what lay beneath. But as I would soon find out, the whispers weren't content with just one listener. They wanted more. And Jenny, innocent and unaware, was about to become part of their chorus. Jenny, man, where do I even start? She was like a comet blazing across the night sky of my life, all bright and impossible to ignore. We met in one of those serendipitous NYC moments that you see in movies, but never believe actually happen. A spilled coffee, a shared laugh, and bam, we were a thing. So when I invited her over, it was a big deal. Not just because I liked her, which I did, a lot, but because inviting someone into your home when it's got a crevasse to the underworld in the living room, that's next-level trust. I spent the whole day psyching myself up, cleaning the place as best I could. You can't really sweep a crevasse under the rug, but I tried to make the rest of the space welcoming. The whispers had become my sinister roommates by this point. Always there, always suggesting I take the plunge. I hoped, prayed even, that they'd have the decency to keep quiet for the evening. When Jenny arrived, she was all smiles and warmth, carrying a six-pack of craft beer like it was a peace offering to the gods of awkward first dates at home. Her eyes widened at the sight of the crevasse, but she laughed it off. "Guess you weren't kidding about the unique apartment features," she joked, stepping over it with a grace that made my heart do somersaults. We settled in, the movie playing, the beers cracked open, and for a moment, I allowed myself to forget about the whispers. Jenny had this way of making the world seem brighter, lighter, and for the first hour or so it was. We laughed, talked over the movie, and I felt normal, happy even. But then, during a quiet moment in the film, it happened. A whisper, louder than before, insistent. "Climb down." My blood ran cold. Not now, I thought, not with Jenny here. I glanced at her, hoping she hadn't heard, but the confused look on her face told me everything I needed to know. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her voice tinged with unease. I panicked, cranking up the volume on the TV, making some excuse about the neighbors being weird. But the whispers didn't care about my excuses. They grew louder, more desperate. "Climb down, climb down." It was like they knew Jenny could hear them too, and they were doubling their efforts. Jenny tried to brush it off, but I could tell she was rattled. Who wouldn't be? Here she was, in a strange apartment, with strange noises urging her to explore the equally strange hole in the floor. The mood had shifted, the air filled with an unspoken question. What the hell was going on? We tried to focus on the movie, tried to reclaim the evening, but the atmosphere had changed. The whispers wove themselves into the fabric of our night, an unsettling soundtrack that refused to be ignored. Then, the unthinkable happened. During a moment of distraction, with our attention fixed on the screen, Jenny stood up, as if in a trance. Before I could react, she was walking toward the crevasse, her movements slow, deliberate. "Jenny, no!" I shouted, leaping up and grabbing her just as her feet touched the edge. The look in her eyes when I pulled her back. Confusion, fear, realization. It was like she'd been snapped out of a dream, a nightmare. "What am I doing?" she whispered, her voice shaky. I had no answers, only the chilling realization that the whispers weren't content with haunting me. They wanted more. They wanted us. Jenny left soon after, the night ending not with a promise of more to come, but with a palpable sense of relief, as she stepped out into the safety of the well-lit hallway. Left alone, I stared at the crevasse, the whispers now silent. Had they gotten what they wanted? Had they proven their point? I didn't know. All I knew was that my life, my sanity, was hanging by a thread. The whispers a constant, maddening tug toward the abyss. There I was, sitting alone in the aftermath of Jenny's abrupt departure, the silence of my apartment pressing in around me. But it wasn't true silence, not really. It was the kind of quiet that screamed, filled with the echoes of whispers that had just turned my attempt at a normal evening into a scene straight out of a psychological thriller. The whispers had stopped for now, their point made. They could reach out, touch us, pull us towards the darkness that had opened up in my living room floor. The TV played on, a mindless drone in the background, but I wasn't watching. My eyes were fixed on the crevasse, that gaping maw that had become the center of my world in ways I never could have imagined. What was it about that hole, that endless abyss that called to us so? Was it curiosity, the primal need to explore the unknown? Or was it something darker, a siren call to our deepest fears and desires? I shudder it, pulling my gaze away, trying to anchor myself to something, anything, that felt real, tangible. Jenny's laughter, her warmth had been real. For a few hours I'd been able to pretend that I was just a guy in a somewhat quirky apartment, enjoying the company of someone special. But that had been a lie, a fragile bubble that the whispers had burst with chilling ease. I thought about calling her, apologizing, trying to explain. But what could I say? "Sorry you almost threw yourself into a bottomless pit in my living room." There was no playbook for this, no etiquette guide for dealing with otherworldly whispers and chasms to the unknown. The night stretched on, each tick of the clock a reminder of the isolation that pressed in from all sides. The apartment felt different now, tainted. The darkness seemed thicker, clinging to corners and filling the space with oppressive weight. I turned up the volume on the TV, desperate to drown out the silence, to fill the void with something, anything, that resembled normal life. But the whispers, though quiet, were never truly gone. They lingered at the edge of my thoughts, a constant threat, a reminder of the unknown that lurked just a few feet away. I slept fitfully, dreams filled with falling, voices calling me deeper and deeper into darkness. In the morning, the sun failed to bring comfort. The light that filtered through the windows seemed hesitant, as if it too feared what lay within my apartment. The crevasse remained, a physical and psychological scar that marred the fabric of my reality. I knew then that I couldn't stay, couldn't keep living on the edge of an abyss, both literal and metaphorical. But leaving wasn't just about finding a new apartment, a new start. It was about escaping the whispers, the call of the void that had so nearly claimed not just me, but Jenny too. So, to those of you listening, wondering if this tale is just a story, a bit of fun to while away the time, I offer you this. Pay attention to the whispers in your life, the calls to explore the unknown. Curiosity is a powerful thing, a beacon that leads us to discovery and wonder. But sometimes it leads us to the edge of our own personal abysses, to places where the ground falls away and the darkness calls. And if you ever find yourself peering into such a place, remember this story. Remember that not all calls should be answered, not all whispers heeded. For some things, some places, are better left unexplored. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you want more stories like this. And keep the lights on. You never know what might be whispering just out of sight.